We have talked about one of the most significant moments, not just in George H.W. Bush's presidency, but really in modern American history, and that is the 1991 Gulf War. It came about, it was August of 1990 when Saddam Hussein's forces in Iraq invaded Kuwait. George H.W. Bush, over the next period of months, massed nearly 500,000 troops, formed an international coalition, set a deadline of January 15, 1991 for Hussein to withdraw his forces or to face war, got approval from Congress. Then when that deadline passed, shortly after it passed, Saddam Hussein hadn't budged. George H.W. Bush declared war. This was that moment.
Now, the 28 countries with forces in the Gulf area have exhausted all reasonable efforts to reach a peaceful resolution, have no choice but to drive Saddam from Kuwait by force.
General Barry McCaffrey is still with us. General, just before George H.W. Bush made that statement on national television in January 1991, there had been predictions that if the United States did launch that war, it would turn into a Vietnam in the desert. It had been basically 15 years since the end of Vietnam. There were terrible memories of that were wide in this country. And it turned out that that war lasted far shorter than almost anybody had predicted. The ground war period in fact, I think lasted less than 100 hours, far fewer casualties. When it was over, George H.W. Bush famously said that we had kicked the Vietnam syndrome once and for all. I do wonder, looking back at that moment, in an indirect way, in an unintentional way, a generation later, did that triumph, did the unexpected ease of that triumph change this country's psychology when it came to war, when it came to the idea that maybe war was a lot easier than we thought it would be?
Well, that's the first time I've heard that question put that way. By the way, I have to backtrack, though, and say it's been really a joy listening to John Meacham and Tom Brokaw with their own memories of this great man. And I think he literally was. This is unusual. I mean, think of where we are now and look at President Bush's life and his devotion to his family and to the country and the service, and just a remarkable, gentle, kind, intelligent, mature public servant. But back to the Gulf War, you know, I think one of the things that was most notable about that conflict was we had in the case of both President Bush, with his intense aviation combat experience in World War II. And by the way, he told my division at Thanksgiving in Saudi Arabia, one of his last missions flying off an aircraft carrier during World War II was in support of the 24th Infantry Division, my division, fighting in the Philippines. I mean, all of us were just overwhelmed. And I say that because it underscores he understood the consequences of war. He barely survived it himself. Our chairman at the time, Colin Powell, had been badly wounded as a major in Vietnam. A lot of combat experience. Our joint commander in the Gulf, Norm Schwarzkopf, had been badly wounded in Vietnam. So, you know, at the very top, you had our strategic planning being done by public servants who, as young men, had been in combat. That changed everything. And by the way, that was one of the few wars where the media and many in Congress completely misunderstood what was about to happen. Just before the attack started, there were all sorts of comments, the effect of this is going to be the bloodiest day since the invasion of Normandy. But people on the ground, you know, division commanders, brigade commanders, particularly those of us who fought in Vietnam, I told Secretary Cheney just before the attack started, this war is going to be short, relatively moderate casualties. By the way, I thought my division would have 2,000 killed and wounded. We ended up with 8 killed and 38 wounded. So I think the bottom line is it was the generation where everyone at the top understood what we were about to do. And that started with the President of the United States.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.